Hello and happy Thursday, everybody. Josh here with On the Wrong Lead. And funny story, I could not find the intro last week. We've switched platforms over, so I had to recreate it. Luckily, I still had the core the core audio file, and was able to recreate something there. But yeah, so if it looks a little bit different, that's why. Obviously, we ran into a couple of technical problems, but I think we did a little test run before this, and we should be good. So thank you guys, whoever went through our technical issues with us last week. And Mr. Technical Issue himself, Mr. Mark Capitan. Mark, how about Microsoft deciding at about 5 p.m. today to just decide to give up on basically everything and go down?
Just gave up on everything. Everything crashed. I was getting all sorts of messages. Nothing more that I love than having to remote into work stuff to figure out what in the world was going on with the entire Microsoft environment for everybody else. It was tons of fun. It was good form for them. Yeah.
Awesome. And question for you: are you looking forward to listening to the entire Republican National Convention in your background today?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's the highlight of my day, really. I can't think of anything I'm more excited for than that.
Well, and when I think about politics, I think about one man and one man only, Mr. Matthew DeSantis. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Taking a break from teaching my political science class that I have this semester online at Central Carolina Community College. Shout out to the Cougars down there in Sanford, North Carolina. But yeah, man, doing well. Enjoying the Saratoga meet. It's been a really fun second week. It's been kind of deja vu all over again as we were off turf the first day of the week, and looks like crystal clear skies and beautiful weather the rest of the week. So look forward to a great weekend of racing. But I will not be here to enjoy it because I will be down in Oceanport, New Jersey, for the Haskell presented by NYRA Bets, even though you may or may not be able to bet on NYRA Bets in New Jersey right now. Still working on that, but we're in the process of it. People, the good residents of New Jersey have seen the press releases. The options are coming. The monopoly is being broken up, but just not quite yet.
I mean, it wouldn't be horse racing, right? If we didn't create a race, name a race after a product that you can't even use in the state. But
100%.
Hey, we're getting there. I mean, heck, we were hours before the Saratoga meet where we didn't even know if we'd be able to bet it on TVG. So who knows, right? It's just wild everywhere. But speaking of wild everywhere, Mr. Caleb Knight, although Matthew did call you the most, he basically alluded to the fact that you're the most disciplined member of On the Wrong Lead, which somehow you're also the most undisciplined and party animal on the Wrong Lead. So I don't know how that necessarily works out, but how you been, man?
Yeah, it's a balance. I don't sleep much, but yeah, no, it's I've been good. Can't complain. Haven't followed a whole lot of racing in the past week or so. Last weekend, I did follow the races, but with thesis work, other things going on, I've been forced to essentially give up weekday racing, essentially. So a little behind, but happy to be here tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, I was kind of going back and forth on trying to decide what to cover today, and I figured with the stuff going down in Oceanport, we should take a look at the stakes races there, and we have some stakes racing at Saratoga where I think we're going to start. I have a pretty strong opinion, I think, in both races at Saratoga, so I don't really think. From a betting perspective, they're super interesting to me, but always interested to hear what you guys think on these races. Maybe I'm crazy on some of these, but we'll go straight to race 10 here at Saratoga. Got the Lake George. It's a grade 3 race here for fillies 3 years old. We're gonna be going a mile on the inner turf here. Your morning line favorite is the 2 oversubscribed here for Chad Brown and Joel Rosario. Yes, that is right. Joel Rosario is writing the shorter priced Chad because all of his normal writers are in are in New Jersey. So, you know, I honestly landed on this horse for a number of reasons. One, I mean, obviously, horse hasn't done anything wrong. Is 2 for 3 here with the second. Has just been bet absolutely off the board. Last time out, made up about 8 lengths in the stretch. I mean, was behind by like 5 or 6 lengths and ended up winning by over 3 lengths. So, I mean, just absolutely, blew past it. Was kind of a weird race because you did have those I think it was 2 runaway horses there on the front end. But in fairness, they didn't really go all that fast. I mean, they went 23 and 46. I mean, in NYRA, that is like, you might as well go, 22 and 44, going there. But, going 46 to the half, going a mile on the turf, like, is fast, but it shouldn't be the winner is 16 lengths behind that second call fast. But yeah, I mean, I think the horse won impressively. Obviously, the leaders came back to the horse, and obviously the maiden race was pretty impressive as well. Showed a nice turn of foot. And correct me if I'm wrong. And we have you, Matthew, on here, and I know you track this stuff all the time. But at least to me, it feels like even now you don't want to be on the front end on this turf course. I still think that it is playing to more closers, and I don't even think pressers necessarily are that well. I think you do want to be coming from a bit off of it, but obviously tons of rain this week. Things can change. I watched a couple of races today, and as I was swearing up and down at Flo for bringing a horse who I thought was going to be closing from very deep and just making just an incredible middle move that if it was Flavian Pratt doing this in California, I'd be standing up and applauding. But when it's Flo doing it in New York, it's kind of like, hi, Mom, we have Flavian Pratt at home, and it definitely was not Flavian Pratt. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that this race is going to play to this horse. I think you have a couple of horses that are going to put an honest pace into this race, and I think it is going to set up for an off the pace horse. I'm going to single the 2 in this spot. I was on the Trust the Profits Doubling Down show, and I also singled the 2 here. I had 3 horses in the leg before, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if another horse won this race, but I just think that this is your most likely winner, and I'm going to go ahead and stick with the 2 here. But Matthew, where did you kind of land here?
Yeah, the 2 makes a lot of sense. And what I'll say about the front end speed on the turf is it varies a little bit, right? We saw White Beam win up on the front end in the Diana, and obviously that was on a day when Flavian Pratt was able to really walk the dog up front a little bit because of a baffling decision by Dylan Davis just to not send with Evie Jets, despite that being the horse's only way to win. And so Flavian was able to just kind of carve out the fractions he wanted and win up front. We saw a heavy favorite today, the Big Torpedo, get a win going gate to wire. Basically, Eric Cancel just sent from the inside and got over to the rail and took him gate to wire. But that horse was much the best and should have won no matter what trip, quite frankly. That horse would have carved out. So, there are some examples you can point to winning on the front end, but I do think this race, there's likely going to be some pace. I think the horse on the far outside coming off a long way off, you would expect is going to show significant speed just because, that's what horses coming off a long layoff traditionally do. And the horse already has some natural speed as well. So I think oversubscribed is very tough in this spot. You saw the race 2 back, that horse had a legitimate problem. And that was anybody who watched that race knew that was, a race where the horse was about to make a move, got heavily checked, lost all the momentum, and still then ended up came charging down the stretch to get second. Yeah, last time out, it was a little bit of a speed duel up front between Makanga, who I think is a really nice horse, actually, and I think is going to win a lot of races gate to wire up here in New York on the turf. But, ultimately was able to run that one down on the stretch. In my opinion, the only other horse that I looked at to consider was the number 3, Manama Gold. And this is just an interesting horse for Todd Pletcher, Louisiana bred, and the sibling to Overcharged, who is kind of a phenomenal turf sprinter now. And what we saw about Overcharged, who was a very good dirt sprinter, was that horse perked up even more when it got on the turf. And I wonder if the same thing happens with the Manama Gold. Last time out in the Jersey Girl, kind of a runaway leader and winner, gate to wire, basically. And so you wonder if, this is a horse that's just going to end up going to another level, switching onto the onto the turf. But you look at those 3 races over in Dubai and at Maidan, winner of the UAE Oaks. So a lot of talent there. And it was interesting that Pletcher sprinted this one first time. I think he just wanted to get a race under her belt. And so I thought if anybody was going to potentially threaten the 2, it was going to be the 3.
Can you say the name of the horse again, please?
Manama Gold.
Do 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 do.
Manamana.
Yeah, there we go. All right, Mark, stop shaking your head and tell me who you like here.
No, I mean, you guys talked about the 2 and the 3. I think they both make a lot of sense, but I think you guys are kind of shortchanging this race, implying it's only a 1 or a 2 horse field. I think this is actually a really competitive race. You can make a lot of cases for some deeper horses and some prices in this field. The horse I actually landed with on top, and I know Gulfstream Park shippers have not been firing the best, up in NYRA, but is the 7 Diragoso. Horses won 3 in a row. 2 of those on turf. Done so quite workmanlike, and the horse looks like a fit on time for him. And when I look at for horses that I want on the in the mile at NYRA, on this inner turf course, specifically at Saratoga, I want horses that are sitting just off the pace, that are going to sit a tactical trip, and are going to be able to kind of turn for harm, pop out, and pounce late. Again, don't want the speeds, but I don't necessarily love deep closers, especially going a mile on the inner, and that's what I worry about with the favorite, the 2 oversubscribed. Now, can she sit a trip and can Joel get her home? Of course, but can Joel also get super confident on a horse, think he has more late than he does, go all hands, and then show up, a neck short on a very short-priced favorite? Yeah, he also tends to do that quite a lot. So I think Manny up on Diragoso is actually a really interesting player in here, and a horse that 2-back effort in that black type is a really nice race, and she seems to really kind of be putting it together here. A lot more starts than a lot of others in here, but seems to be kind of still finding a little more. So I thought Diragoso was actually my top pick in this race.
Yeah, and it looks like we have a viewer in the chat. What? No, that is his name. What? He says yes, the 7. Thank you. To kind of piggyback on what you were saying about Joel, sometimes he rates a speed horse, looks to get in, just deep trouble, and you swear at him the entire race, and then he gets outside and just wins by a nose too. Sometimes that happens as well.
You mean sometimes he rates a speed horse, invents trouble, comes around the top of the stretch, clips heels, drops back, goes outside, makes one run down the middle of the dirt, and gets up by a flared nostril? Yeah, sometimes he does that too. Yeah.
If you don't like that, you don't like Joel Rosario. That's all I'm saying. All right, Caleb, where did you land here?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Mark in the way that I saw the race, in the sense that it isn't a race that I was drawn to a bunch of horses as much as it's a race that I was drawn away from most of the field, actually. I had a hard time landing on any horse that I was real excited to get after here. So my main opinions are that I don't like the Chad Brown horses, which I'm sure comes as a surprise to everyone here. I guess a little contrary to like Josh's take, I think they blazed in the Wild Applause last out. Time Form has the early pace fractions is 162. Everything's color coded red. The raw fractions 23:46 don't sound like they're that fast, but given what we've been seeing and the way they have it coded, Chad Brown had a rabbit in that day, and I think it just set this horse up very well. Maybe she's good enough and doesn't need it here, but as the favorite, I think she's one I'm okay with taking on. I do agree with Matt and Mark about the 3 and the 7, both horses who I do like in here. And I guess the other 2 that I probably will use in some kind of spreading to the non-obvious, I guess is what I would try to approach this race as, is the number 1, Gavia. I thought a bit of an interesting runner in here. If you do believe the time form fig of her last race, she's actually the fastest horse in the field, which is a little bit interesting, I thought, to me. Making that second start off a big layoff here for Al Stahl, who's having himself a pretty good start to the Saratoga meet. Looked like a horse that just maybe needed the run last out in the regret. She does have the ability to be forwardly placed, doesn't need the lead. And I do think you're getting a nice rider upgrade here from Leparoux to Hernandez. So I thought there was lots to like about Gavia here. And the other horse I used who I thought was, pretty interesting at a price was the number 4, Vive Wave. And this is a horse that, won 2 races going into the Wonder again and then ran a nice third place. Only beaten a length in that effort at Aqueduct at Belmont, going a mile and an eighth. Perhaps a touch too far. Cuts back to a straight mile here, which I think makes a lot of sense. And was beaten by Segesta, who ended up running second in the Belmont Oaks to a really nice Appleby filly. Cinderella's Dream, I think the horse was. So I think the form of that race is flattered. I think the cutback helps, and I love the string of turf works coming in. So for me, I'll be using the 1, 3, 4, and 7 and take my chances with Chad Brown beating me in this race.
All right. Anything else on this race you guys wanted to talk about?
I had 2 others.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I have 2 others in here that I think are both kind of, you have to talk about horses, and they're both on the also eligible list. So, we need some scratches in the field for either one of them to get in. And that's the 11 Golden Degree and the 12 Goa. So the 11 Golden Degree, I realize Linda sucks first time on turf and going dirt to turf. That's just not her thing. But this is a horse that, was claimed from Brock Calhoun, seemed to take a race to figure it out, and then won by 32 lengths, in a maiden 40 down at the duct, and then came back in an allowance 50 with Lascano up and won by 7.5. So clearly Linda has figured something out. Now that 2-back race, she was trying to get that horse on the turf, and then the horse just dusted the field, kept that horse on dirt. There is some turf pedigree there, both top and bottom, and again, you have to squint a little bit to find it. But this is a horse that's in really good form with some tactical speed. I don't like the post draw. Obviously, post draw is terrible going a mile here, and you probably need some help inside. But it's an interesting horse who, at a stupid price, probably has some upside in here. And the other horse I was a little interested in is Goa, who is the probably other Chad in here or something like that. But this is a horse that's won 2 in a row, on the synth at Chantilly. And it ships over the states, and has, Chad gets these kind of types. It's a Madacat Stables horse that Michael Dubb co-owns. These are the kind of horses that they grab out of Europe, they ship to the States, and they show up here and they win races. And I wouldn't be surprised if this one, obviously No Nay Never, who's become a pretty prodigal sire at this point in time, and Galileo on the bottom end, that's as turfy as you could probably want to get. And this one probably gets a little lost on the board, not having a turf win, and being one that, for whatever reason, they're running this one at Deauville and Chantilly on the synth, and but the breeding kind of says that turf should be the surface. So, I thought this one was interesting if if she can draw in.
Matt?
Yeah, I guess. So one thing I'll say about the number 7 trainer Antonio Sanyo over the last 5 years is 0 for 13 in stakes races at Saratoga. So just something to keep in mind. I also am one who is typically skeptical of that Gulfstream Park form, traveling outside of the state of Florida. So particularly on the turf, that's just something usually it's not quite the same as like West Coast turf, not translating to the East Coast, but it's kind of a middle ground there where I just don't really trust it all the time. So I think that's kind of a reason to maybe be concerned. But I will say the other thing to mention about the horse that Caleb mentioned, the number 1, Gavia, that horse that won that race, the regret, Pinup Betty, I would argue ran a really, really good race next time out in the Belmont Oaks and finished 4th that day. But that was a really good 4th. And that horse definitely outran her odds, and I thought ran a pretty good race for Mike Maker. So again, I thought that was a productive race to come out of, and I just wanted to kind of make that note on the 1. And so I still like the 2 and the 3 in here, but I think definitely an interesting that also eligible that Mark brings up is quite fascinating. The Chad one is really interesting, and obviously is going to need quite a bit of help to get into the field, but I'd be interested to see what happens.
Well, I mean, Matt, you also mentioned the winner of that race. The second place winner is Buku, and a little foreshadowing,
Right.
we will probably be talking about that horse later on at down at Monmouth,
Yeah, 100%.
who is obviously in a tougher spot there, but clearly
Yeah,
there was some quality in that race.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, we are on the wrong lead, handicapping, wagering, and bourbon. I have scotch today. That might be a little bit of a I don't know, faux pas maybe for handicapping racing, but I got this bottle, and I made sure it's pre-opened on my trip back from Mexico. So if you guys don't know, for some weird reason, a lot of these bottlers of whiskey and stuff, they will have stuff that's only available at the airport. So this is a bottle of Broodlatic, which is a Isla single malt Scotch whiskey, but it's unpeated, which is very rare for Islas. And it's normally non-age stated, but this one is 8 years. So it's a nice, beautiful blue bottle. It's called the Laddie 8. The regular bottle is just called the Classic Laddie. And the reason I'm talking about this Scotch is because I think it's much more interesting to talk about the Scotch than it is to be talk about this race. The CCA Oaks, we got 5 horses, showing up here. Obviously, you got at 1-2 Torpedo Anna, and might even go off shorter than that in this spot. And then you got Candied at 5-2, Leslie's Rose at 5-1, Intricate at 8-1, and then Barbratina at 20-1 here. So, I mean, I have Torpedo Anna as an A. I think that this race, at least to me, makes it kind of tough to play this late. Well, I mean, I think maybe depending on your opinions in some of the other races, you can make a case. Yeah, Mark's making it look like what are you talking about? It's a free space, like that should make it easier to play.
You turned your pick 5 into a pick 4. If you'd like the pick 5, play the pick 6 instead, and you turned your pick 6 into a pick 5. Like, I don't understand what the problem is here.
I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like sometimes it doesn't end up being worth it because I feel like sometimes it'll play even shorter in those horizontals than when it's playing in the pick 1. But does anybody have a strong opinion here other than Torpedo Anna?
Will say I spoke with Richie Migliori about this, and we did a preview on the new NYRA Bets YouTube channel, #plug. And so wanted to mention that Richie, his top pick is going to be Candied. He thinks that this horse is sitting on a really big race. He has a feeling that Leslie's Rose is going to really press Torpedo Anna. And he talked a little bit, and I asked him about kind of as a jockey, how he would approach short fields. And he said, the problem is in a short field, everybody knows who to key in on. And he goes, in a big field, horses can get lost. They can get shuffled around. You're not necessarily running against a horse. He goes, when it's a short field, everybody knows they're running against Torpedo Anna, and everybody keys in on Torpedo Anna. And he goes, it's amazing. He goes, the amount of times I've run in short fields, and the favorite's the one who gets the most trouble in the trip somehow. Now, that said, Torpedo Anna on paper should just get out up front and just go, and it shouldn't even be a competition. But he thinks, and I think there's a logical explanation here, that Johnny Velasquez is going to try to send with Leslie's Rose. And while they're not owned by the same group, they are trained by the same person, and maybe try to soften things up for Candied to come running, who had a huge effort last time out. I'm still going to be singling Torpedo Anna, to be clear. But I think there is, a scenario where maybe something crazy happens. Remember, this is the same race where we saw Maracuja beat Malafat in a 4-horse field 3 years ago. So you never know what could happen. And but what I will say about Torpedo Anna is she won over this track 6 weeks ago. And so you can't use the argument of, well, she's not run at Saratoga before, Saratoga, the graveyard of champions, sort of thing. She's handled this dirt course just fine. And, you could argue she was being pressed by, and she was pressing actually, just FYI, the entire way around and just blew away that horse. So it's hard for me to make a case against her, but I just at least wanted to give a nod to an argument against and an argument for Candy.
Yeah, I very much agree with what Matt's saying. But my thing is, somebody like Torpedo Anna, she's controlling pace of this race, and she's shown that even with some pace pressure up front, she's still really good. She doesn't need to get loose, right? So in those types of situations, I think you approach the race a little differently. I could see a very cute low percentage high lambda type play where you maybe use you lone A her, you buy the race's C's, and then you hope that she doesn't fire and 99% of the pick 5 tickets are dead. There's always that sort of case to play, but you're not playing it on paper, you're playing it purely from a game theory standpoint. She towers over this field. I'd be shocked if she loses.
Now, you're saying a high lambda play. Now, if you said a high lambda play, and we're talking some Revenge of the Nerds, maybe I'm in. But okay, Matt, I was hoping somebody was going to pick that one up, and Matt, I saw at least a half chuckle on that one, so I'll take that as a win. Caleb, as the other optics semi-truther in the group, does this plot do anything for you for the one, Candide?
I think if anything, it maybe surprises me a little bit that Torpedo Anna looks not as good as I anticipated. I mean, I guess it's a small field, and maybe it's a function of Candy just has such a light kick that she's the only square in the entire plot. I can't tell for sure what the 5 is coded as there. It's kind of small, but yeah, I mean, it maybe makes me think maybe Anna's a bit more vulnerable, and I do think Candide is your upset pick, but at 5-2, I think there's no value in in using both horses there. So I think I will go with Torpedo Anna, and if she loses, I'm okay with losing.
Yeah, I always have a hard time with these races when you have a clear favorite, right, that looks very, very good on paper, and then the only real other threat to that horse is the second choice, and the second choice is also going to be relatively short. I feel like that's got to be some type of negative play taking that second choice. In that, because I feel like the second choice is still sometimes also ends up getting underlaid. And I see someone H in chat saying Torpedo Anna is winning. The question is just how far. So love to see the confidence.
I think the other thing we could mention, just because I know we're moving on to Monmouth after this, is there's been a lot of discussion about track bias already at Saratoga. Obviously, we saw during the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival meet, you didn't see a lot of horses closing from off the pace. You've not seen a ton of that now. You did have a very notable case with the maiden Brown-Eyed Cat on opening week, making up a ton of ground late. We've seen horses make up ground. They just haven't necessarily gotten home to do it, but we've seen horses flying up from the back. And it's not like they're spinning their wheels necessarily, but it just, they just haven't been able to get home. So I do think if you're front end controlling speed and you're somebody like Candy and you're sitting 6-7 lengths off, maybe you have to hope that the Brian Hernandez is your best ally here, and it kind of bunches the field up and maybe brings everybody closer together, and maybe you have more of a chance. But it's going to be hard for Candy, I think, to make up significant ground over the main track.
All right, and as usual, a 5-horse race. We probably spent more time than we did on a. I mean, half of it was spent playing me talking about Scotch, so it's fine. It's fine. But I haven't had a chance to look through the rest of the card. I'm sure the rest of the card looks fine. I'll be taking a look at. Obviously, I mentioned it earlier, but I did do a episode of doubling down with the with Colin over on Trust the Profits. So check that out. I doubled into that. That stakes race, singling the 2. So check out our thoughts on that. I said I wasn't going to give out like a 3x3 double because that's just like not what I do, and I feel like there's like no value in that. And then Colin went and gave out a 3x3 double, and I kind of felt a little bad, just kind of being like under no circumstances am I going to do this, and then. But we had fun.
There's always I mean, if you if you take enough stands against other horses, then a 3x3, can make sense. But it's hard to. It's got to be the right circumstances.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and take a look at these stakes races over at Monmouth. I think a couple of these races look pretty good. They spread them out over the two sequences, so I think if you get some strong opinions in here, you're gonna have a couple of different places to look. And we're gonna start with the as Chase likes to call it. I believe he calls this the horse jizz. Right? Is that what he calls it?
It is. It
Right.
is.
Yeah. So the matchmaker stakes here, grade 3, and the reason we call that is you get a total value of $50,000 in stallion seasons awarded the top 3 finishers. Hey, 2 fills is in there. Let's go. But yeah, we have a grade 3 here. We're gonna be going a mile in the 8th on the turf. I think you have a pretty interesting group of horses in this race. I think you're going to get a very flat board. When a horse like Papilio, who used to be, somewhat highly thought of, is going off at the longest price on the board at 12-1, you probably have a pretty good field here. Your morning line favorite is going to be the 7, Butte Cachet here. And then you got a couple of 7-2s in Delahaye and Olivia Meralda. But Caleb, I'll let you go first here because when I think of turf routes, I want to know what Caleb Knight thinks, so then I know what to avoid. So, where did you land here?
Well, I couldn't find any Belmont firsters, so I had to look a little bit harder. I don't know what sequence this is in or how, anything beyond that, but this is a race I would have no shame about just taking an all button. This race is rough for me. I guess if I had to pick a top selection, it might be the one, Delahaye. And I don't even really like that horse very much, but boy, this field is just, I really struggled to land anywhere with conviction. I think that this horse has 4 wins out of 6 starts and then has never missed the board, in all of her career starts. Seems to be getting better at the right time, has improved or at least paired efforts in all of her starts. And on time form, she did pair up her last 2 races. That last or 2-back race, against Chili Flag, that form has come back pretty strong. A couple of grade 1 wins and then places in that field out of that race. So I do think she's probably the horse I want the most of. Pratt gets up in here. There's a lot to like, but boy, is it just not a horse that I can really latch onto with any confidence because I feel like this is a incredibly a flat race for me. So I guess maybe my opinion is that I'm not going to concede the race to Butte Cachet. I don't know where her Jenny Wiley came from. I thought she got away with murder on the front end. And maybe Frankie tries those tactics again. It could happen. I think Saez probably keeps her a little more honest up front on the 6 Sacred Wish. So I'm not really a big fan of Butte Cachet in here, even though her race 2 back was quite good. I think she was lucky. And I think as the likely favorite, she's one I probably like less than half the field. So a tough race for me to have a strong opinion, but I'm a little bit against the favorite. But I do kind of like a lot of the horses in that 7-2 to 4-1 range.
Yeah. One thing I did notice about your analysis, though, Caleb, which I thought was at least a little bit interesting, is you said the word Chili Flag, and then you said grade 1 after that. And you kind of stuttered and stumbled a little bit, so I know how hard that was for you to, kind of concede that to Chili Flag. So
Yes.
I appreciate you powering through that.
It was
Mark, where did you land here?
Oh, God. I really hope that when Delahaye wears this field that they don't breed her to 2 fills because that'd just be a really terrible pairing. That's just a terrible idea. I think Delahaye is just a single in this race. I think she's controlling speed. She's in the best form of any of these. I think this is her trip, and you get Flobby and a board on the front end. I just think this race goes through Delahaye, and I don't really think you have to get too creative beyond that. Nice and simple.
That's a really cheesy sound effect, but I had to use something.
That was cheesy, but I appreciate that you added a new sound effect to the board just to mock me. That's good.
All right, Matt, where did you land here?
mean, I landed on the 1-2, but now I feel stupid. I mean, like, in terms of, all three of us, I just feel like, well, we got to say something else because I agree with Caleb more than Mark in this regard that I think you can make a very legitimate argument for every single horse in this field potentially. And while I like Delahaye the most, and I think this is a horse that Flavian up on the mount is just right now, like Flavian on the turf right now is just like an automatic bet. Like, I don't care what the odds are. And this is a horse that's just done very, very little wrong, and can do it a few different ways too. Is wire the field and come from well off the pace. So depending on how the horse breaks, Flavian's got options there. So I do really like this horse. I think surprisingly is a really interesting horse for Todd coming out of that Grade 1 New York, where she finished fourth to Dadia and Nisi Marie and Warlike Goddess. And, there are some races there. My concern with her is she doesn't necessarily like to win very much and hasn't really done that over the last year or two. I mean, so the last time she's won was February 2023. So that's not necessarily what I would like to see with a horse that's 4-1. The horse that I think is interesting is the 6, Sacred Wish. I think that horse is interesting because I was at the Haskell preview day when they ran the Eatontown, and all of us were kind of stunned that Kendrick did not go straight to the lead with this horse. And then the horse encountered some trouble and was kind of boxed in, was not able to make a run late, still got up, ran fourth. Kendrick after the race, because I know someone who's pretty good friends with Kendrick, and Kendrick after the race said, they told me to rate, so I rate. He goes, basically Kendrick's like, listen, I don't have the cachet to be able to pull a Joel Rosario and be like, I'm going to do my own thing and not worry about, what the ownership group thinks. And, when the connections say to rate, you rate. And this horse, why they decided to rate is beyond me, because the winning formula the last time out was just to send. You have Louis Saez aboard now. You would imagine they learned from their mistake and they're just going to send because if she doesn't, then to Kayla's point, maybe Frankie and Butte Cachet then just go straight to the front and just try to wire the field. So, I think the 6 goes, and I don't know, that horse at 5-1, which in this field is actually a modest price, and will probably float up simply because it's not a Chad Brown horse. I think, that might be an interesting horse, maybe to use more underneath, because I could see if she tries to wire the field, maybe she tires late, but it is an interesting one to at least mention.
So I got to ask with Sacred Wish, Matt. I mean, what is she at this point? Like, isn't she kind of she's a black type winner who is kind of like graded stakes placed? Like, isn't she just not that good? Like, isn't that where we've gotten to with her?
Probably, but I think you're right, and I think the best effort you're going to see from her is up front, and that's when you're only ever going to get her best under those conditions. Now they have to be the exact right conditions. And again, I don't think she's good enough to win this race, but I think if there's ever a chance for her to be graded stakes placed, I think this is kind of, another chance to do that. And, she's obviously graded stakes placed back last year on the Pebbles, but I don't know. I think, that's kind of the level that she is. I don't think there's another gear to her necessarily or anything like that. But I just think from a tactical standpoint, go to the front and see what happens. Like I would much rather have a jockey do that and a connections do that and kind of let the chips fall where they may, rather than rate her where she's got no chance at all in this field at all. Because she doesn't have a kick. She's not going to make up ground on this group. So, we'll see. But I also just thought that was an interesting note from Kendrick more than anything else of
Oh yeah. No. Yeah.
The connections told me to do this thing, so I did the thing, and we'll see.
Seems
Wasn't
odd for
there
them to
another-
ring up and ask him to rate? But go on.
Yeah, so 2 things. One, right, like if I had a horse in New York and I knew it was a speed horse, like literally the 2 people I would get on the horn or tell whoever is training get on the horn is Louis Saez and Kendrick Carmouche. Like you don't put Kendrick on a horse to get like a tactical one run ride. Not that he can't do it, but I want this horse get out the gate clean and get to the front, right? Same thing with Louis Saez. I mean, Louis Saez I think has started to show a little bit more versatility, but he's still one of the best when it comes to getting a horse on the front end. And yeah, that's neither here nor there though. But two, wasn't there another turf horse named Sacred Wish that was just like in that group? No, I thought wasn't it a French horse that that was like in that group of horses that just kept on beating each other in the New York stakes racing over and over and over and over again? Or am I misremembering? I could have sworn that there was another Sacred Wish horse. It was Sacred Wish FR. But
I can't remember.
If Caleb, I don't expect you to remember because you just blocked that out of your mind, right? You block, right? I say Channel Maker, and you're like, who's the other? Oh man, who's the other? Just absolute marathon. Red Knight, Arklow. I'm thinking even further back. Oh man, Sadler's Joy. Yeah,
so
there
we're
you
just
go.
naming horses that have hurt Caleb.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, we're just there we go. But yeah, I guess I'm the lone dissenter in here. Lo and behold, I'm not taking the speed horses. So Mark, you did say at some point that you were going to take the Josh horse, and I wasn't going to be on it. So maybe this is the case where I'm using two horses. I'm using Surprisingly, and I'm using Maman June here. Surprisingly, I mean, I think looking at the optics plot on this horse, just really seems to fit, as kind of a tactical horse, right? That is probably going to get first run on this speed. The plot's kind of got the 6 and the 7 kind of vying for the lead there. Now, you guys made a great point. If Sacred Wish for some reason doesn't send, I think the pace complexion in this all completely goes out the window. I think Delahaye is gonna be set up much better, and then I think even the 7 horse Butte Cachet, who I know none of us are really on, is also going to get just an absolute nice setup here. But if we do get a little bit of pace in here, I'm not saying a complete meltdown, but I'm just saying not a NYRA special up front. I think surprisingly looks really, really good. Optics obviously it looks really flattering on there. My concern is that this horse doesn't like to win. Now you do look at the horses that she's losing to, and those horses would be odds on or even money in this race. You look at like Didia, McCulloch, Warlike Goddess. Those horses would be in this race, and they would be, I mean, they'd be, clear favorites in here. So, maybe we're getting a much easier spot here for Surprisingly. I know class doesn't matter, but class doesn't matter until it does. And I just think that that pace-wise, it makes a lot of sense for this one. However, I think the other Chad here, the 5, Maman June, I think is coming in here with a very, very clear plan, and that's, hey, we're going to make a run, all right? We're not going to be anywhere near the front. I will say, I don't know, Caleb, what the rules are on this. A fake Chad running at Monmouth.
It's like a double negative, so it's fine.
Yeah, okay. Because, right.
Doesn't it become a triple negative if it's got Vinny up?
I mean, it's got Vinny up, and I mean, you guys have heard me say that I want to start tracking the Vinny off angle, because Vinny got off of Didia, and then we saw what happened to that horse. So, yeah, I don't know. Maman June, I thought once again, run style absolutely fits here. Speed figures, I think, is going to need a little bit of help, but I think that's, if we do get some type of pace scenario up front, I think Maman June is definitely going to be the one kind of picking up the pieces late. So I'm taking the tactical horse, the 4, Surprisingly, and I'm taking the deep closer, the 5, Maman June, in this spot here. Anything else you guys want? Oh, go ahead, Matt.
No, I wanted to let you know that I spent the last 2 minutes while you were talking going through Channel Maker's old racing forms to try to find the Sacred wish horse. I could not find any sacred wish horse, but I did. It was just like a trip down memory lane, seeing like Limprador and Rock Emperor and Sadler's Joy and Arklow and just like all these turf marathon horses that I was like, Jesus. They just kept running against each other. And I just kept scrolling back, and it was like in 2019, and I'm like, Jesus, they were still running against each other back then. Like, it's just like incredible to see this like group. And finally I ended up at like Bricks and Mortar, and I was like, okay, I've gone too far. Like, I need to come back. Like, it's too much.
Good.
Hey, Caleb, I feel like you need to break the hat out now. Where's the hat?
Oh, it's Louisiana, sadly.
That's so funny. Anything else here in this race?
I didn't love the 3, but I didn't hate the 3. I mean, the horse is likely going to be probably, second, third pick on the morning line, maybe? Or rather at post time. I mean, I have no reason to dislike or like this horse, really. The horse is just fine to me. Is that kind of the consensus? Just could win. 7-2 kind of stinks, but I mean, maybe.
Well, I think we're all playing the same game of kind of picking the horse that we like the most and then realizing that you probably have to buy the race to have coverage. Like, I don't think there's any horse you're saying, geez, they can't win. There's a lot of, I think questions about pace complexion, but sure, could win, has talent, finished second the last 2. I don't dislike the horse. Could definitely win, but I just, it's one of those ones, if I go deeper than just having the one horse I like on top, I have to buy the race, and that's painful.
Sacred Life.
Sacred Life. There it is.
Sacred Life was a Chad Brown horse.
That horse is like a Monmouth expert. I remember that now.
Did that horse win the Opera and then ship over for Chad?
Ran second in the Prix Dauphin and then the Prix du Prince d'Orange.
So the spring Opera, and then, okay, cool.
Yeah. And then, came over. But was a really bad horse. All right. Race 6 here, the Molly Pitcher Stakes. And wait, was this the horse? No, this was not the race. But this is the Idiomatic race. And Idiomatic is 3-5 on the morning line. And there's some interesting horses in this race, I think. I mean, you see Kathleen O showing up again, kind of getting off the I thought she was in witness protection, but apparently she's been running at Gulfstream in Monmouth. But I mean, Idiomatic should just win this thing, like with both hooves tied behind your back, right?
I think so, just because it's important to point out that both Misty Vale, the 3 of the 5, and Just Catherine, the 3, are cross-entered in the Chuvie that's going to be run on Sunday at Saratoga. I would imagine the connections will go there, just because that is a significantly easier spot to get your horse a graded stakes win than running up against Idiomatic. So if those two scratch, then I really don't see. I mean, this is just the immortal lock, I think. I mean, this would be more surprising than Torpedo Anna, in my opinion, if Idiomatic were to lose here. She's a beast. I mean, she is just physically, it's getting to rock hard 10 territory. She's just a bigger creature than everybody else around her. And it was she lost to Randomized last time out. By the way, shout out to Flo, who rode that horse like she was Pegasus. And just thought that at some point she would take to the air and just run past everybody while traveling 8 wide. I swear to God. And just, I wish one day I have the amount of confidence Flo had riding that horse. It just idiotic. And so, presumably she'll get a more sensible ride here. And just because of the shorter field and the conditions, but she's controlling speed. I think this is open and shut.
Matt, some of us were on Randomized that day, so we're a little less spiteful about it.
For you, if you were, that was awesome.
But Randomized did not show up in this race, and Idiomatic just towers over this field. We don't need to talk about this one very long. She should win this in a laugher.
Yeah, I agree. My only real question is why is she here? I mean, and maybe they just want to get a race in before what I assume when she goes to the personal ensign at Saratoga later, but I mean, she's just too good to be here. I mean, imagine you're the owner of Miles of Smiles and your horse is getting hot and you said, hey, let's take a shot at a grade 3, and you fucking run into Idiomatic. You have to be so upset. she's not supposed to be here, but she is, and that's a little bit weird to me. Like, I still think she wins 99 times out of 100, but maybe this is just a dead spot in the calendar. I mean, last year she went to the Delaware Handicap instead. Maybe there's just I don't know the calendar well enough to say what other races she could be in, so maybe that's just the way it shakes out, and they want to give her a race before the personal ensign and then likely Breeders' Cup.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, she should win this race.
I will say that Cox came out pretty shortly after that Ogden Phipps and said they were going to the Molly Pitcher. So I mean, that was it was known for several weeks that this was the target. So I think that to your point, Caleb, I think at least it speaks to a plan rather than is there something wrong with the horse? Is like this a soft spot, and are they trying to like cherry pick a field to win? It did seem like this was the strategy. For whatever reason. But I agree. I mean, I would be absolutely not thrilled if I was the connections for like every other horse in this race and be like, we're trying to get a grade 3 here, Brad. Jesus.
I also think when you're somebody like Cox, and we've talked about this, some of these big barns are just loaded, right? And we talk about the fact that Chad shows up with 5 turf horses in every race. Is this just a case of Brad managing his barns, spreading his horses out? Hey, I'll give this one an easy win. This will be, a nice, easy. She'll cash for $350K, and then I ship her back to Saratoga where she goes after, I don't know the next race that's the big Philly race that they would be pointing her towards. But is this just a soft, easy spot, get a race into where we cash a check and we move on? Because he does have a big barn. He's got a lot of very talented horses in it, and you don't want to be running 3 Brad Cox horses in this race, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I agree with you that this would probably be a bigger surprise if Idiomatic loses here than Torpedo Anna. So I don't really think we need to spend too much more time on that. So let's move on to race 10 here, the Monmouth Cup. We're gonna be going a mile in the 8th on the dirt, and your morning line favorite is the 3 Highland Falls. And then you have the number 8, Tacitus. Tapit Trice at 2-1. You got 6-1 on Kuchar and Justify's brother, and then Counter Spy 10-1, 15-1 on Kozaris and Far Mo Power. Surface to Air at 20-1, and I feel really bad for Mark in this spot, because I believe I stole his thunder. I have what is basically a single A, and that's the 4 Counter Spy. Paco Lopez gets aboard here, and sometimes it's just easier to show why I like this horse. So I will pull up the old optics plot here, and we will look at race 10. And boy, oh boy, do we not have a nice little Q1 square here on the surface of distance for Mr. Counter Spy. I think Paco's just going to get out there loose on the lead. And I think, at Monmouth, speed generally tends to be pretty good, especially on these really, really big days. So, above the par line, there's just really nothing not to like about this horse. Obviously, the 3 Highland Falls, the favorite, might just be good enough and just be too good, and might be just the one that wins this race. But 10-1 here on this 4, that's going to be tough for me to look past. So I'm all over the 4 Counter Spy, kind of just loose there, and I'll probably use the 3 Highland Falls in some way, shape, or form as an A or B, just in case Paco falls on his face or something. But love this 4 here. Mark, anything I missed there?
No, I think you talked about Counter Spy very, very well. It fits on BSF, fits on Timeform. Again, I don't dislike Highland Falls. I just kind of don't know what Highland Falls is. Highland Falls won the blame, kind of was supposed to win the blame. I think it was short of the money, was like 4-5 or even money, something along those lines. Was like supposed to win that race. And some of the other races prior to that, a little bit of a head scratchers. It's one of these, sometimes these super trainers get these horses who are, seem like the next coming. And then I don't know. It just there's something that rubs me a little wrong about Highland Falls. I don't know if this one is, is at that level, and I just think that morning line at 6-5 is just way, way, way too short on a horse that can he win? Of course he can win. Can he, take a step forward and become a major player in the division? Yeah, sure, maybe. But I just really want to take a shot against, and I think this race is a little too flat to not take those. The other horse I'm really interested in here, and of course I cap a race, and things that never happened to me, I land on, I think, the two longest prices on the board. The other horse I was really interested in here is the 6-horse Surface to Air. For a trainer who I will not even try to say his name because I am noted for screwing up names, and my God, I will brutalize that one. But comes out of a Darren Miller barn. It was claimed out at Churchill, and again, 0% barn trainer that just doesn't get winners, goes into a fairly high percentage barn and takes a step forward and then consistently takes steps forward. This is a horse as a 4-year-old who seems to have gotten really, really, really good. And on time form, he does not need a major step forward to be a pretty substantial player in this, and he's taken a step forward in every one of his last 3 races. So I think Surface to Air is actually a pretty interesting player here at I think what is the longest price on the board. Not a ton of speed in this race, so I think he sits a nice mid-pack trip, and we'll get to know if he's the real deal top of the stretch. But I really kind of liked him in here. So he was the other one I really liked. I kind of tossed all of the shorter priced horses because I think they're all really suspect. I think this is just a really suspect field in general, and I wanted to go for an outsider here.
Matthew?
Yeah, I didn't have this on my bingo card tonight in terms of horse shipping up from Parks, stretching out being a top choice while switching off Lasix. I mean, it's just a tried and true angle. Like, you always trust Parks for him. Maybe Jamie Ness shows up with Repo Rocks and he wins this race by 10 lengths. I mean, who knows? So it's you guys are out of your fucking minds. With all due respect, like, Highland Falls is going to win this thing for fun. But so I know what Mark means about Highland. I do know what you mean about Highland Falls. Just like, what is this horse's deal? And I'm going to make a comparison. I don't mean to trigger Caleb at all because I'm going to bring up Chili Flag. And I see these two horses actually having somewhat similar trajectories. And that Chili Flag was this horse that came over from Europe, and then Chad runs this horse in like allowance and optional claiming races for like a year. And you're like, what is this horse? Like, I mean, when Chad brings horses over from Europe, typically they step up into listed stakes. Maybe they get one allowance race. They go straight to stakes company, and you see them run at a high level. And then all of a sudden, somehow, this horse just keeps getting better and better and better, starts running in a listed stakes, then starts running in grade 3, grade 2, grade 1. And you're like, how the hell did Chili Flag become a grade 1 winning horse? Like, when did that happen? This horse was running an allowance company 6 months ago. And so I think Highland Falls has a similar trajectory in that the horse broke its maiden kind of after everybody was already excited about the 3-year-old crop last year, and, was a late developing Curlin baby and was kind of, okay, so Brad has this horse down in Ellis Park and Churchill, and then kind of out of nowhere, he sends the horse to the big cap out at Santa Anita, and the horse runs 4th. But I mean, geez, that wasn't that bad considering it was his first time in graded stakes company. And then the horse runs 2nd to Skippy Longstocking, who ran a freaking hole in the wind that day at Oak Lawn in the Oak Lawn Handicap, and then comes back to Mark's point and does what he's supposed to do and wins the blame. But you see it right there on the Briz numbers. He's getting faster every single time out, and he's progressing. So I don't know. I mean, I think he's a formidable horse in this field. I do not like Tapit Trice at all. My father, Blaine DeSantis, who, as most of you blocked on Twitter, he said that after Tapit Trice ran in the Kentucky Derby, he said to me, and this is a direct quote, that horse will not win again until he is facing Allowance Company at Penn National. And this isn't Penn National, and this isn't Allowance Company. So he's a toss. So I'm sticking with Blaine's angle on that until he runs at Penn National. So, yeah. So I was rather boring there. I will say, in terms of a little bit of a price that I'm interested in is Kuchar. Actually, I think is a little bit of an interesting horse. The number 2 horse that had some form back going, when it was younger. and it kind of has bounced around, was in the aforementioned Jamie Ness barn for a race, and has kind of rediscovered some form with Rudy Rodriguez, and has kind of slowly but surely kind of improved and kind of run back to some races that the horse ran to as a 3-year-old. And I don't know, maybe there's more of an underneath play, but I thought it was at least an interesting horse.
Caleb.
Yeah, so I do tend to. I kind of see both of y'all's points. I had a slightly maybe a blended opinion of this race. Of the short prices, I much prefer Highland Falls. Tapit Trice. This still isn't Penn National. I'm with Blaine. Not on my tickets. I do respect Highland Falls, but at 6-5 for me, when I see a 6-5, that kind of starts to edge into, can I single this horse territory, or should I be able to single this horse territory? And I don't think I can. I just don't trust him quite that much. Matt makes a good argument that he has just improved, and he probably sitting on an improved race once again. But I did think that he's a little bit tough for me to really get fully behind, although I'm not going to be surprised at all when he wins this race. So I did agree with some of the horses you guys already discussed. And Kuchar, I think, is interesting, as well as the counter spy number 4. At 10-1, I could throw the horse on a ticket, but yeah, I think you guys are overstating his chances quite a bit here. And then I do agree with Mark on the 6, Surface to Air. I think 20-1 feels a little too generous there, but I think this is a horse that perhaps just has figured something out in his last 3 starts as a 4-year-old. Probably the only horse I would want to talk about that we haven't already addressed is the number 5, Koziris. So this is a horse who I think is coming out of a really interesting race in that optional 50. It was essentially a 2-horse race because they were just a mile clear of the rest of the field when they came for home that day. And this horse looked out of gas at 2 different points of that race. I mean, going down the backstretch, the horse was kind of retreating, and then found another gear, drew neck and neck with the leader, and then again, gets eye to eye with the 3-5 favorite, and looks like he's going to just fall back again. And in the last 16th, just once it just blows on by. And I thought that was a bit of an interesting race there. I mean, perhaps maybe not bred for stamina by any stretch, but perhaps the stretch out to 2 turns here. I mean, this horse has just improved a little bit. I do think there's a very big question to answer about the Lasix on, Lasix off for this horse. So I think you need to demand a pretty good price because his prior 3 starts without Lasix have not been very impressive. But he's one that I think if you can get that 15-1, I'll throw on a few tickets.
All right. Let's move on to unless anyone had anything else in that race they wanted to talk about. I feel like we touched on most of the horses in that race. So let's move on to the United Nations. We're going 1 mile and 3/8 on the turf here. We got a nice full field of 12. And your morning line favorite in this spot is going to be the 12 Farbridge at lukewarm 4-1 favorite. You got 9-2 on Web Slinger, and then you got some horses that I didn't know were still running in Adamo, Tawny Port, and Running Bee, but apparently they're all still running. Caleb, you ended the last one, so why don't you start this one? Where did you end up here?
Yeah, so I'm excited for this race because I actually do have some opinions here, and I do like some prices. I do respect Farbridge as the favorite. Based on raw figures alone, this horse is going to be tough in here. I think the post shouldn't be as compromising of an issue given the distance of the race here, but I do think it still needs to work out somewhat of a trip. But I do respect that horse enough that he'll make my tickets. I'll skip over my 3rd pick because I know that at least you, Josh, will be talking about it. So a horse that I actually really like in this race at a nice price is the number 7, Data Man. And this is a horse that I think, once again, is perhaps just getting good at the right time. Was always somewhat of a well-regarded 3-year-old, I think. They tried Stakes Company with him at Aqueduct. It didn't work out all that well. Kind of put him on the dirt a little bit. Didn't really know what to do with him, and ultimately they've stretched him out on the turf, and it seems to be that's where he's found the most success. He got a big runaway winner at Delaware in a race that was actually washed off the turf. Came back at Laurel and won a listed stakes race pretty convincingly. Went into the Virginia Derby, which last year turned out to be an extremely salty race for a Grade 3, running into the likes of Integration and Program Trading and other horses, Runaway Storm, who are quite talented, all repeated to win in their next start. Was probably tackling a bit too much in the Jockey Club Invitational, going 1.25 miles in the slop, but then finally gets back to these turf races, and his last two are excellent, in my opinion. I mean, his last race at Monmouth, he was closing into a slow pace. I mean, 24-4, 49-1, in a race where the horses who finished, second, third, and fourth were first, third, and fourth at the first call. So a race where essentially no passing was done and the speed really held together. I thought he ran a really nice race to come from last to loop the whole field and to go on to win. That's after he hit the gate and had a bit of trouble there as well. I think that form is flattered with Forever Super and He's Pure Gold. So the third and fourth place finishers to come back and win in their next start. Forever Super actually came back to win with a pretty nice figure up at Laurel as well. So this is a horse that normally the form isn't one I gravitate towards, but I really do like this horse in this race. I think it's a great price. It's Graham Motion's kind of backyard in that Laurel Monmouth scene. Him and Jorge Ruiz team up and do really well together. So this is one of my better opinions of the day.
Now, Caleb, is your third choice happen to also be the 3-horse?
Well, yes, it does.
in Get Smoking. Look, we're getting back to my bread and butter here, right? I see an E8, and we're just going. This horse made me a heck of a lot of money in that Kentucky Downs race. I could not believe that this horse went off at the price he did, because Kentucky Downs was playing speed, and this horse just got out there and won by a length and 3/4 at close to 20-1. So basically made my weekend there, and was I'm going back to the well here. Obviously last time out, was on a synthetic, kind of had it his own way, going 24-2, 49-1, but kind of looking back at some of these races, I really think that this horse, does like the additional distance. So I think the fact that we're going to be going even longer, I think is going to play a little bit more into to his strengths here. So because that 1.5 miles at Kentucky Downs, might as well be 1 3/4 anywhere else. So I really do like this horse here, coming in with the. Coming in and going to be probably loose on the lead here. You do have the 8 so high in here that has also shown some speed, but I think that that Get Smoking is just going to be faster early. I know Optics tends to agree with me a little bit there, but I agree with you, Caleb. I think Farbridge looks really, really good in this race. I think if something dumb does happen on the front end and you get even more pace, I think that just plays even more into Farbridge's hands. And was facing much better horses in that Manhattan last time out. So and finished third there. Wasn't embarrassed whatsoever in that effort. So coming back here, I think Farbridge is going to be kind of tough to beat, but I'm going to go and I'm going to take a longer price in the 3 Get Smoking as my top pick here, and see if we can get a little front end magic here going with the old E8. Matthew, where did you land?
Yeah, this is a really interesting race, and I think this is one you could go in a few different directions with. Reminds me a little bit of the matchmaker in that regard. I think you can make strong arguments for a lot. Farbridge, obviously, I think would not surprise me one bit if the source won. I just hate the post position more than anything else, and just not really sure Jose Ortiz is going to be able to figure out the right trip from there. I do like Data Man quite a bit for Graham Motion. That was definitely one of my top 3 selections, and I think that horse is sitting on a really big effort. I always like Graham on the turf in general, and Caleb's right. This is kind of his backyard, so I think that one looks really good. I have a feeling Mark might have some more to say about that horse, so I'm going to leave that to them. And I see what you guys are saying about the 3 Get Smoking. And we should mention Mark Cassie's barn is doing quite well up here in Saratoga right now. Now, a lot of those are babies. A lot of those are like 2 and 3 year olds that are running really well for him in maiden special weight races, but he's sending out some very live runners up here at the spa. So that barn is clearly going in the right direction right now. I do wonder just how much pressure So High puts on Get Smoking, and whether or not, even if the pace is not contentious, or even I shouldn't say contentious, even if the pace is not too hot, it might just be contentious. In that, and horses get bothered when there's another horse around them. And you actually saw that going back to the race that we talked about with like Makanga, where Chad put in a horse that was a rabbit in that one, and set things up for oversubscribed. And so it just, horses don't like that. So I just wonder, that was kind of my one concern about Get Smoking. I ultimately landed on 2 horses that Chase doesn't think are running, or Josh, I should say, doesn't think are running anymore. And that is Tawny Port and Running Bee, who are, in fact, still running, because I saw them run. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. I saw them run. They're still around. And they're coming out of the same race, which was that Monmouth Stakes last time out at the track on Haskell Preview Day. And I like Tawny Port quite a bit here. This is, I think, kind of a cool horse that was a grade 3 winner on the dirt, and has switched over to the turf for Christoph, and has, become a horse that, is a stakes winner on turf. I think probably moved just a smidge too early last time in that race, and ended up getting napped at the wire by Fort Washington and Running Bee. But I think you get Flavian Pratt up on the mount. I mentioned this earlier. Anytime you get Flavian up on the mount and on the turf right now, I'm interested. So that's a horse that, has a little bit of tactical speed and can be sitting in kind of a mid-pack trip, I would imagine. So interested in that one at 6-1. And then, listen, Running Bee won that race. And I know this has, your boy Vinny on the mount, but, he ran a heck of a race that day with this horse. And I didn't think was able to kind of get up and manage to kind of get there. And, it was a dead heat with Fort Washington, obviously. But at 8-1, you're getting, I think, a pretty good price on a horse that, if you scratch the kind of soft yielding turf efforts that have been out there, this has been an incredibly consistent horse the last several times out. I mean, running 95, 96 buyers and really not doing a lot wrong. Again, doesn't always win, but I just think it's kind of an interesting play.
Mark.
Yeah, so Caleb sort of you guys sort of stole my top pick here with Data Man. I think Data Man makes a ton of sense in here. I think it's probably more of a bad morning line. I mean, if we're all on the same horse, I would assume that he ends up taking some money off that morning line, and you don't get quite that much. But I thought Data Man was super interesting here. But the other horse that I have to go to that nobody's talked about yet is the number 10 Webslinger, and there is a fair bit of pace in here, and Webslinger needs a pace setup. We all know this, and he is a horse that's kind of shown that he doesn't win when he's supposed to, and he wins when everybody kind of scratches their head at it. I know he blew up the board on the Derby Day a couple of years ago at a stupid price, but gets another jockey change to Louis Saez. I have no problem with Louis on the horse. Jose won last time out with him, and I think Louis and Jose are very similar in sort of their riding style. And he once again gets a really nice pace setup in this race. Has a win going across the surface and has a win going this trip. So, I think Webslinger at that 9-2 kind of price point, if he takes a lot of money, he's not that interesting. But at 9-2 kind of range, I think he's an interesting player in here for a horse that clearly has a lot of talent. I think is the fastest time for him in the field. Clearly needs his pace set up and clearly needs to bring his A game and kind of be mentally there, which I think is sometimes the case where he's not 100% kind of focused. But if he brings his A game, he's a very, very interesting player in this affair. And I think beyond that, you guys have talked about all the other kind of horses that I was interested in. So add some Webslinger in there.
Anything else?
So just Mark, heads up. I mean, they're basically the same price in the morning line. You would take Webslinger over Farbridge?
Yeah, I think I would.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to me, they're very similar horses, but I think I much prefer Farbridge, but I view them somewhat similarly. So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, it's hard to kind of draw a line between the two of them, but I think I probably land on Webslinger over Farbridge for no real reason. Like I can't really define it, but yeah, I think it would land on Webslinger over Farbridge.
All right, let's move on to the NYRA Bets Haskell. Yeah, exactly. He's throwing up the signs. We're going to be going a mile and an eighth on the main track here. And oh boy, your 9-5 favorite is the 7 mind frame. You got Dornock and Fierceness at 5-2, Tuscan Sky at 9-2, Timberlake at 8-1, and then you got 30-1 on Just Step on It and Jasper's Pride. This, upon first look, this looks like a pretty good group of horses, I think, for this time of year. However, we don't know who's running. It sounds like the one Dornock is going to run after, Danny Gargan is like, we're not going to run because we drew the rail, even though he drew the rail in the Kentucky Derby and ran there. So, which is even much, much worse to draw the rail, I think, in the Derby than it is in such a short field here at Monmouth. But so it looks like he's staying in. And then Fierceness and Mind Frame, I think we're going to be a game time decision on where those kinds of go. If one, both, or none run.
I think Mind Frame is definitely a go.
Okay.
I think the game time decision is Fierceness,
Okay.
and that from what I've been told, that's the game time decision.
Okay. So, yeah, I think, Fierceness not being in there would change the pace complexion a little bit. So obviously take some of this with a grain of salt. Make sure that, you're paying attention to scratches and stuff and just kind of keep up to date on the news with that. But as the namesake of this race, Matthew, I will let you go first. Where did you land here?
Yeah, it's a tough race to handicap because, like you said, there have been so many question marks around who's running, and the problem is Dornick and Fierceness, the two horses that have the most questions, are pivotal in understanding the pace scenario in this race. And so if either or both don't end up running, that changes everything about it. It does seem like Dornick's going to run. Cooler heads seem to have prevailed, and you would imagine Luis Saez is going to just full send from the rail. I have a hard time imagining Fierceness is going to run in this race simply because John Velasquez has 8, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mounts on Saturday at Saratoga, 5 of which are trained by Todd Pletcher, 1 of which is owned by Mike Rapoli. That would really send a lot of people scrambling to, I'm sure Katie Davis and Jackie Davis and Dylan Davis, the whole Davis family would get a lot of phone calls, I think, on Saturday if Johnny's not riding up there. And that's no shots at them, but it's just, you're looking for just spare parts to some extent up there if they're not able to run. And so, Mind Frame was a horse that I was dead set against in the Belmont Stakes. Didn't like the horse one bit. Class test, outside post position, I thought the horse was kind of putting up fake figures and kind of fake performances against nothing fields. Horse goes out and runs a huge effort and honestly probably cost himself the race with his greenness of just like jumping out about 4 paths, down the stretch when Irad went to the left-handed crop. And so, which I'm not really sure why Irad did that, but that's neither here nor there. I think he has the ability to sit off the pace in this race. He's shown the ability to rate. He does not need the lead. He can let Dornick get to the front. Dornick's a tough customer when he's up front, but after that race at the Belmont Stakes, I had a friend who's another handicapper say, that's the last time Mind Frame's going to lose to Dornick. And I kind of had the same impression. And so I like Mind Frame. What I would say is if there's a horse that you're going to try to beat Mind Frame with in this field, there's 2 that come to mind. One is Timberlake and the other is Tuscan Sky. Tuscan Sky, I feel like, is the overlooked Pletcher horse who had a huge race last time out in the Pegasus. And that was a bizarrely run race. I would personally just suspend like at least 3 of the jockeys in that race just for idiocy, and just be like, so, nope, you can't run for the next 2 weeks. You have to think about your decisions. I want you to sit in a corner and I want you to think about what you did, and just like really have them contemplate their life choices. Because rarely do you see just 5 stacked around the track and just everybody going, this seems like the best way to win. Anyway, Tuscan Sky got the easiest of it because he was on the inside rail. And so he was able to just draw off at the end and was able to beat a very good horse like Domestic Product, who we see came back, win the Dwyer quite easily in his next start. And I think, if you're willing to forgive that effort at the Wood Memorial where he just did not get away that well and didn't get his trip, he's also shown the ability to sit from off the pace and should get the pocket trip behind Dornick. And then Timberlake is your classic. I mean, he reminds me so much of Cyberknife a few years ago in that he's a little bit of a head case. He is a little bit immature. He is trained by Brad Cox. He's jockeyed by Florent Giroux. And everybody's excited about the Belmont Stakes rematch. Just like a couple of years ago, everybody was excited about Taba versus Jack Christopher. And then Cyberknife sneaks up the rail and just poops on everybody's happy day. And I feel like Timberlake could do the exact same thing because that's what Flo and Cox do when they get to team up. So, those are the 2 that I'm looking to as an upset to mind frame potentially.
Now, what if I told you instead of Flo, you get an even better Frenchman?
Oh yeah, you get Flavian. I'm sorry, it's not Flo. Yeah, it's Flavian, which actually would make sense.
Yeah, I mean that's who I ended up as my top pick in this race, Timberlake, and nothing against Mindframe. I was all over Mindframe in the Belmont, and just didn't have enough, and kind of had to go really wide, and I think a little unlucky not to win that race. I think I hate this saying, but he really was the best horse I think in that race. Now you're going from 5-1 to 9-5 in this spot, and with a scratch of fierceness, if the possible scratch of fierceness might be even shorter in this spot. I'm just looking for some kind of value in here, and I agree with you, Matthew. I think Timberlake is the value play in this spot. I think obviously as a 2-year-old ran really, really well, came back, won the Rebel, and the Arkansas Derby just something happened there. Horse ended up on the lead, which he hadn't since his maiden race, and maybe just moved too early in that spot. Obviously, ended up being a very productive race. You had Just Steel come out of that. You had Mystic Dan come out of that. And obviously, Muth won that race, and we're yet to see what Muth is. I think that this horse coming off the bench, this is a move that Flo likes, or Brad likes to do. He'll take these horses and he'll give them a break, and he'll bring them right back into tough spots. He has no problem doing that, and he gets Pratt to come back and ride this horse again. And as much as I still hate Pratt for that DQ of Maximum Security, who knows how many years ago at this point, he's riding absolutely lights out right now, and I think that Timberlake is definitely in here with I think a puncher's chance. My guess is you're going to get closer to 4, 5, 6 to 1 on him, not 8 to 1, especially if Fierceness scratches out. But I think he's going to be kind of the value play in here. And I think Dornock is still a little interesting still. Back on the rail, Luis Saez staying aboard, and if he's able to get on the front end and maybe get a little loose out there, maybe he's able to hold off Mindframe again. I just think that you're not going to get the price that you might that you did last time, obviously, where he was 17 to 1, and you're probably going to get closer to 2 to 1 in this spot. And while I think he's got a shot in here, I think that's just going to be a bit of a short price to take. Now, I think if you're playing horizontally, maybe this is one that you use as a B type here, the way I kind of play. But I'm going to have most of my money, I think, going through Timberlake in this spot. Caleb, where did you land?
Yeah, need a ton of time because I didn't have anything super creative in here. I think that Mind Frame is the most likely winner. Should have won the Belmont. Similar to Matt, part of horse racing and handicapping is figuring out when you might have missed one. And I was also against him in that race, and was fortunate that he didn't win. Not that I had Dornoch either way, but like for the moral win, he didn't win. So, but he was the best horse, and I don't think it was all that debatable there. If he matures a little bit in his next start, I think he'll be extremely tough to beat in here. I agree with you guys in principle that at 8-1, Timberlake is probably the value. But watching some of his races, there's just nothing that tells me this horse really is a true mile and an eighth horse coming off this kind of a layoff. I just don't like it. I don't like him at the distance really. I didn't like his Arkansas Derby, even though the race came back pretty lively. I don't think he's beaten a whole lot, truthfully, in the races that he has shown up in. So he might be the value simply because I don't think there's a lot of value in this race. Dornoch at 5-2, Tuscan Sky at 9-2. I mean, yeah, and then you probably can't really make a case for the 6 and the 8. So Timberlake's the only horse I think you can make an argument for that might be 4-1 or better, but I don't know that I can truthfully make that argument that much. So for me, it's going to be Mind Frame, probably as a single. I'd be more inclined to give a shot to Tuscan Sky, maybe over a horse like Dornoch or Timberlake, simply because I think there's some upside there. I do think he took advantage of a pretty favorable trip in that last out Pegasus at Monmouth, but he does have 2 races to his credit that are quite fast. With his last race and then his race, 3 back at Fairgrounds actually came back pretty quick, especially the time it was held and the fact that he beat Nash pretty handily. So I think that Tuscan Sky is the one that maybe I would give a more of a look to as opposed to like a Dornoch or a Timberlake, simply because I think there's upside there. But I do think Mind Frame is the horse to beat.
Yeah, I'll keep it really quick. I see this race exactly like Caleb does. I think Mind Frame is very much the horse to beat in here. Obviously there's the case with Fierceness, which Fierceness shows up. And if the good Fierceness shows up, this is a really interesting race. But I just, with Fierceness, I just have zero trust in him. So I think Mind Frame is the horse to beat. He's a lone A on tickets for me. You can make a case for Fierceness. I would probably let him beat me at what he's probably going to be second choice in this field. I'll take Mind Frame, who's developing, clearly the horse that's maturing. And he just, if he'd figured it out in the last out, he wins the Belmont, and I was on him that day, and him winning would have been very nice for me. But I had nothing much more creative to say. Basically, see it exactly like Caleb. I want Mind Frame, Fierceness if the good Fierceness shows up, and I prefer Tuscan Sky over Timberlake.
Mark, I mean, you are like, if Josh is the cheap speed guy, you are the every other race angle guy of this stream. And Fierceness is the most every other horse
I've
on the face of the planet. Like, how are you not just? I don't think he's going to run. I agree, but if he does, how are you just not all over him?
I don't know what to do with him because he's one of those horses. Like, I love every other pattern horses. It's something I chase, and I've done very well chasing. But my thing is, I just. There's certain horses that sort of bounce and then recover and clearly need some time, and they're rushed back a little too quickly, and that next race out is just a subpar performance. Fierceness goes from being arguably looking like the best horse in the world to looking like, I don't know, a Parks horse or something. Like he just there's no in between, and he's so bad when he's bad. And like he's his Derby, it's like he just fell off the face of the planet. His Holy Bull, he was supposed to win by 50 lengths, and he just kind of was horribly mad to a bunch of nobodies. It's just his bad is so bad, and I don't know, is he just a massive head case? Is he the type that just is amazingly mentally immature and still is trying to figure it out? Is there some sort of ailment that's aching him? There's a lot of rumor mill going around that there is something amiss with him that they are trying to treat, and if they have it right, he's good, and if it's not right, he's very bad. I don't know. So I tend to be the every other guy. I get it that I do chase that a ton, but there's something just, I don't know, something, he gives off a lot of red flags for me.
And guys, make sure to come back next week when Mark singles Fierceness in the Jim Dandy. So
yes, that is.
No, I mean, I agree with everything Mark just said, and and Caleb as well. But the fierceness, yeah, he's such a mercurial horse, and I know part of it is he's physically not gotten much bigger from 2 to 3, and so this was kind of an issue with Forte as well, that like he didn't really get a lot bigger, and he didn't just physically mature the way some others did. One of the things I will say, I spoke with both Matt Dinnerman and Crystal Conning, who are Crystal and Matt. Obviously, Matt's the voice of Monmouth, and Crystal's the paddock analyst. They both were at Oaklawn Park this winter. They both said, independent of each other, that Timberlake is built like a 2-turn horse. And because I had the same skepticism about the 2 turns as anybody. And even Cox, after the Arkansas Derby, said, probably going to try the horse at a mile next. And then you see him show up in a grade 1 going 9 furlongs. And it's so like, huh? But they both swear that horse is built for 2 turns. Now, you can look one way and you can respond another on the track. But, we'll see. But yeah, fierceness. I just, there's been a lot of buzz about foot issues with him, and trying to figure that stuff out, and that's just been speculation at this point. But that's what's out there, and it's been kind of it's just been such a difficult puzzle to crack that I don't think it's. I agree with Mark. It's not as simple as just like every other. It's like, no, there's something underlying here. That's the problem. It's not just every other, and I do wonder if there's a little bit of like charge it, if he's got a little bit of charge it in him. And I've made this comparison before.
Or Tacitus or Tapit Trice, or there's a list of these that have that thing.
Yeah, but he also, it's like whenever he's like the bully in the like 3rd grade. And then like, I don't know, like when he has to like go up against, like when he sees a 5th grader, he like shrinks and like, cowers away. And it's like, yeah, he can beat up on what was essentially a glorified allowance race in the Florida Derby. And, he was a better 2-year-old than some of these others. But like when he actually faces these mature now 3-year-old horses, he's like, I actually want no part of this. Thank you very much.
Yep.
And so I think that's kind of the issue.
All right. Anything else on this race? All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us. Matthew, what do you got going on this week? Where can people find you? What kind of content you guys pumping out over there?
Always got the content pumping out. We got a new NYRA Bets YouTube channel. You'll want to make sure to check that out. We have a lot of different things, not just for up here at Saratoga. Obviously, a lot of coverage of the races being run at Haskell and Monmouth this weekend, I should say, for the Haskell Stakes presented by NYRA Bets, and contractually obligated to say that. And so then we also have a lot of fun stuff, live streams on Tuesday nights at Assiniboia Downs, track stats videos, all sorts of good stuff, and plenty of written content up on the site as well for tracks from across the country. We're going to have a lot on Del Mar, obviously kicking off here this week, and continuing to cover Monmouth, Saratoga, and all the other places that they run. So yeah, just doing a lot of stuff. But if people have not subscribed yet to the NYRA Bets YouTube channel, make sure to check that out.
Cool. Caleb, Mark, you guys going to be around this weekend? You guys playing anything? Caleb, are you just still waiting on the supercomputer? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm going to carve myself a bit of a breather probably for Saturday. So I'll watch some of the stakes racing Saturday, play a little bit. Tomorrow, 50-50. And then Del Mar, does that open tomorrow or is it open Saturday?
Saturday.
I might take a look at that, although I heard the opening card looked kind of rough, or at least the opening sequence looked rough, I heard, but I haven't checked it out yet. So,
Horses that were drawn into the fields, I don't know how good the fields were, but I know they have like 117 horses.
Yeah,
I want to say across 11 races or something.
The last few years they've had huge cards for opening day, but somebody said like 4 of the first 5 are maidens or something like that. So I mean, you pick your spots, but I'll be around Saturday. The rest of the weeks maybe 50-50.
Yeah, I'll be on track Saturday at Saratoga. I'll be on track tomorrow for a little bit of the day, and I am debating about buying into the Haskell tournament. They have like 5 or 6 BCBC slots that get handed out in the Haskell tournament, and I just got to find my Bill Mott firster. So I may take the
that
stab.
easy.
I do kind of like. it's a fun it's one of those sequences that probably plays into my play style. So let me think about that one and try to get my cheap BCBC seat.
Yeah, and I will. I think I'll be around. I think tomorrow I'm gonna. I covered the late pick or the early pick 5, excuse me, with Andrew Champagne on Drank and Champagne. So check that out. The race that shouldn't exist is part of that sequence in the Curlin, I thought there was some opportunity in that early, but Andrew thought it was very chalky and he was going to play it pretty straightforward. So we had slightly different opinions on that, and a little interesting. And then obviously Saturday, we have some good racing going across the country on Saturday. So it should be fun. We're getting into the middle of it. Once Del Mar opens, it's like the floodgates are full, and Caleb better hurry up with that thesis because he's got some degening to do. So,
Got that.
but that's going to do it for us. Obviously, check us out at onthewronglead.com, at wrong_lead on Twitter. I'm at Cherry Drank. Mark is at 2 Turns, and Caleb is at Caleb WVU. We will catch you guys later.